Aloha and welcome to the Embodied Healing Self podcast with your host, Jen Mons. Each week, join me for soul-inspired, conscious conversations around embodied healing and awakening to your soul's purpose. Thank you for listening in. Hello and welcome back. Can you guys believe it's the end of July? So as you're listening to this, I'm probably on my way to my summer vacation with my family this summer, which we have decided to go to Yellowstone, finally a landlocked destination. We're usually going on a surf trip somewhere. So I just want to send a little shout out to all of you enjoying the last moments and weeks of summer and just encourage you to really get out there and enjoy. I also want to give out a shout out to a super special, sweet person, Angie, who left me a review that I'd like to share with you. Angie is from Pennsylvania, and she says, the show is hopeful, encouraging, and inspiring. I've had the pleasure to connect with Jen recently on private coaching calls, and what stands out is the sense of peace, hope, and being seen that I leave with each time. Last night, I finished listening to my first episode of her podcast, and these feelings followed. She brings forth inspiration and connection while inviting you to be seen, heard, and loved. If you're looking to listen to a podcast with a soothing voiced friend in the chair next to you kind of feeling and full of inspiration to take away, this is one for you. Angie, thank you so much for those sweet words. And for those of you that have left me reviews, sometimes it's hard for me to figure out who the person is simply because the name shows up as your login. So if you sign with your name, I'll be able to give you a shout out too. And I love to do that because I just really super duper appreciate you guys listening. So today's episode, although titled Consciously Parenting Through Fear and Pride, is really about receiving the expanded energy of life through conscious choices. My personal experience and messaging that I received over the past few days came through to me through a parenting experience, navigating through fear and pride. But it's really more of a message of intentional choices, the invitation to lean into your body wisdom and trusting your intuition, which applies to all areas in life. And how when we do this, we can live more in alignment, connection, and flow and ease as we receive the expanded energy that our soul is calling us into. So it's really the intention of this show. And I also want to say before we dive into the show today that the stories that I'm sharing, the names of the people and the places are kept sacred, and just understand that these stories are just personal experiences, that this is not giving advice in any way on parenting or therapy, but really just want to share some expanded awareness that came to me through my personal experiences. So thank you so much. Let's dive in. Aloha, friends, and welcome back. So I'm really excited to record today because this recording is just coming to you out of really just in a present experience that I just had, which led to a conversation with my husband of really just pure euphoria this morning in a moment, which I'm going to share with you. And it's around the topic of conscious parenting through fear and pride. And why this is so close to home for me is because when I look at the bigger picture of my life, becoming a parent was first of all, physically a rebirth for me. I had a life-threatening experience, which I'm sure you've heard if you've listened to other shows, but it's not really about the physical experience and health transformation that I came through, but more about the spiritual awakening that was a result of me starting to live and choose my life differently. I know that many of my listeners are parents, not all of them. You know, being a parent can mean caretaking, it can mean pets. And it's really just about the energetic exchange and relationship that you co-create with another being on the planet. So I just want to say that because I really feel very passionate about the exchange of energy. But quite honestly, becoming a parent 100% completely transformed my life, and my children have always been my greatest teachers. In fact, I'm just going to declare this out loud that I began writing a book about conscious parenting about 3.5 years ago. And as I say this, it just, calls in the intention to be curious about when that book will be ready to share and be received. And I trust in the divine timing, because so much has happened in the last 3.5 years. And this is kind of a thing where I'm always about 3 years ahead of myself. I'm going to share 2 stories with you. One around consciously parenting through fear. And this is a story that happened actually 4 years ago, almost to the day. It was actually in June, I believe. And then a moment that I had this morning. So the story 4 years ago is about consciously parenting through fear, which some of you that are listening may actually recall this event as it occurred in our community that involved my younger daughter. And the other one is just an event that happened today. So 4 years ago, my younger daughter was 6 years old. So this was 2015. And she's an incredible swimmer, which is, I'm going to correlate to the second story. I myself have actually been a swim coach. I was a collegiate swimmer, something that I love, and just decided that we would do as a family so that we could really just become super aware and conscientious in the ocean. Our family spends a lot of time on boats. We have a boat, we have a sailboat, we surf. My husband is a harbor pilot, so he works on ships. We went to the Merchant Marine Academy. I mean, our whole life just revolves around the ocean. We are both professional mariners. Not being in the water isn't really an option in our family. So the story that I want to share with you is when my younger daughter was 6 years old. Now, keep in mind, a 6-year-old is incredibly young. She was at the local community pool, and she was a very good swimmer at this age. Actually, it was her first year on the swim team, but a very competent swimmer. Always top 1 or 2 at the seasonal championships. So really, really athletic, good swimmer. And when she was at the pool as a 6-year-old, she's kind of a unique little spirit. She's kind of in her own space most of the time. And she noticed a young boy laying at the bottom of the pool. This was actually during a summer camp, and she swam down to him. And this was the story that she shared with me. And I'm going to share her story, and I'm going to share the story that I almost went into. So the little boy got too tired and went to the bottom of the pool. And so the story in my mind was, there were people there that knew that she was the one that swam down to him as a 6-year-old. And so there were parents reaching out to me, like, is your daughter okay? So they had to pull this boy up, and thankfully he survived, but, give him CPR and do all the things, right? Like, he was losing his color. And I started to kind of allow I had to do a check-in with myself. Like, I started to feel panic and anxiety, oh my gosh, is she going to be traumatized if I hope the boy survives, because, this is, of course, right? And this could be traumatizing, and thinking of the bigger picture and allowing myself to be pulled into fear momentarily. And then I just kind of heard this, this little voice in my head, just check in with your daughter. And so I sat her on my lap and I looked at her in the eyes and I just said, so tell me about what happened today, and she's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, tell me about what happened when you were swimming. And this is what she said is, so I was just swimming and playing, and then I noticed a boy at the bottom of the pool. So I swam down there, and he was laying on his back, and his eyes were closed in his goggles. And I looked at him, and I kind of shook him for a moment, like, wake up, because I thought maybe he was sleeping, and he didn't move. So then I wondered if he was pretending. So I tickled him, and he didn't laugh. And so then I put my hand on his heart and I just said to him, "You're going to be okay." And I swam up to the surface and got the attentions of the lifeguard, which I'm not quite sure of the details in this moment, but at the same time, lifeguards are swimming in to go get him, and brought him up to the surface. And I share this with you because the shift in energy that occurred to me in that moment was that she was coming from a place of unconditional love, not fear. And I had a choice in that moment to allow her to remember the story from a place of love and not my own fears, not projecting my fears on her, like, "Oh my God, are you okay? And are you sure?" And she doesn't even really remember the story now. And it was just such a profound moment for me, and really just like all of a sudden I saw all these life events in my life that had unfolded before me in that moment where as my own childhood experiences where, my parents had beliefs or ideas that shifted my experience, right? Like this is a thing for us. And then realizing my experience as a parent previous to this, where I had had the same pattern, and realizing that in this moment I was choosing to shift it, and just really having gratitude for that. In fact, I wrote an article on it. Yeah, I just really, for those of you that are parents or young parents out there, I just really want you to, I just invite you to just, allow yourself to receive the message in this story. And then I'm going to bring it around to a story today about consciously parenting through pride. So in the same scenario, now my daughter's 10, and this was really the last season of her being on this like summer swim team. And she really wasn't into it. She didn't go to practice. She went to a couple meets. She's still incredibly talented. She shows up to champs and swims against 150 kids and comes in first place. And, as a former collegiate swimmer and a former swim coach, of course, I think this is amazing, right? But her path that she's choosing is to be a surfer. And so she is choosing to use her athletic gifts and her ability to be so present, which is an important part of surfing, as a surfer. And she has already opened up a pathway to surfing. We're going to East Coast Championships in September. She's very intentional with what she wants to do. And this is where, our children are our teachers, right? So I'm in this space of the coaching that I do. I had 3 coaching sessions yesterday, and there was this common theme of all these women, which of course, what we're here to learn, we're here to teach, right? I see this even in my own life of women really wanting to, really being called to let go of the identity and their roles and their value and what they do, and believing in the value of just who they are, remembering who they are. And I was one of these people, former mechanical engineer, military graduate, right? Living in a very masculine environment, proving myself. And it served me really, really well until it didn't serve me well, which was a physical breakdown in my body of pregnancy-induced liver failure, which was in 2006. And so there was this theme that was happening yesterday of listening to these women. Some of them have had health crises already, or they know they're on the verge of it, and they just want to find this connection to their well-being through their self-worth. So I'm having this conversation with my daughter, and my husband and I decided to allow her, because she was really resisting. She's like a Buddha baby. She's the sweetest girl ever. And, just a joy to parent. But she has really resisted me on showing up to this swim championships this year. And then just so happened there was a surf contest that day. And so I live in Northeast Florida. There's been no waves. We just found out the surf contest was canceled. So I had given her the opportunity, because she was resisting so much. My husband and I decided to let her decide. So she's part of a relay team that breaks records. She is, one of the top 3, even without practicing performers in the whole district. I mean, she has a chance to come home with a first place medal again, right? She's going to come home with multiple, possibly, breaking records, consistently year after year with her relay team. And she's a part of this relay team. And as a parent, I'm thinking, well, you have a commitment to the team. You have a commitment to the relay team, at least. But as she was resisting me, I was just like, okay, there's something here for me to learn, right? I'm a really big fan of like when there's resistance, lean into the discomfort and like allow it to speak to you. And this was this was different. This was choosing differently. My husband and I decided to have a long talk with her and let her make the decision. And ultimately she decided that she just didn't want to do it. She doesn't bring her joy. She doesn't enjoy any part of it, the competition against your teammates and that kind of thing. And so we said, okay, we made the decision not to go, but to do the surf contest instead. Then when the surf contest was canceled, we asked her again. I asked her yesterday, I said, so you have a choice. Like, do you want to do the swim championships? Like, I looked at the sheets and your time, like your top 3, you're going to do really well and your relay team would, come in first. And she's like, I don't care. And in this moment, I started realizing, like, here I am parenting through pride. Like, because I look back at my childhood and I started swimming later. I was about in middle school. And thinking about my childhood and, quickly becoming a high performance swimmer myself, and always wanting that and never doing it for myself. And then here's my daughter who can easily have this athletic ability to do it. And she doesn't care. And I was thinking about like how much I value myself in my life for being a high performer, right? I mean, how many of you women and men that are listening can relate to this? How many of you listening have put so much value on being a high performer? And has it served you? Are you making a lot of money in your business, even if it's not the job that you love? Are you successful? Are you an attorney, a doctor, something of high value and credibility through our culture standards? Are you high achieving? Are you a high performer? And are you happy? One of the messages that I share with the women that I work with, that comes to me all the time, but I realize I'm not fully actually living in it and was actually trying to push it onto my kids again subconsciously out of my own need and pride, is that just because you can't do something doesn't mean you should. Just because you can show up to swim champs and get a first or second place medal doesn't mean you have to. Doesn't mean you should. And this was like a switch for me because, here I could say, well, you've been given this talent. Like, why wouldn't you use it? It can help you in surfing. It's going to make you better at surfing. She just really didn't want to. And she's super clear about her energy. And it's one of the things that I think makes her such an incredible performer. It's not from a place of proving anything. It's from a place of like alignment. So think about that. If you're a high performer in a place of proving something for a reason that's not in alignment with you, is it serving you? Or can the gifts and talents that you have that are part of who you are, whatever it is, the energy around it, right? The energy of being disciplined, can you just take that energy and move it into alignment with your values, joy, happiness, health, whatever it is, rather than from a place of proving yourself? So I had this moment this morning, right? So that was like an aha moment yesterday. I was like, wow, she just told me she didn't care if she gets a first place medal. Like I would have loved, like I always wanted that. I remember the girl that I always wanted to beat. I remember her name. I remember what she looks like. I remember everything about her. Everything. And my daughter is that girl and she doesn't care. It doesn't make her happy. She knows what she wants to do and she's intentional with her energy. She's keeping her energy and her talents and gifts for her passion. She's not doing something just because she can. She's doing what she wants to. And she's harnessing that energy in a positive way. I was like, wow, like 10-year-old, like, you okay. Like, I guess I did something right in parenting, but really, I mean, it's part of who she is. She came into this earth, right? Clearly, if you think back at the story of her being a 6-year-old, like old wise soul. So this morning my husband shares a post with me on Instagram of a picture of him when he's a teenager, growing up on the island of Kauai, and just, being surrounded by all these, people that are, some of them legendary. I mean, he grew up with legendary surfers. He competed with Andy and Bruce Irons, for those of you in the surfing community, super just amazing experience. And as I'm looking at the picture, I became overwhelmed with this sense of euphoria that was almost orgasmic. It was like this energy that felt so good, and I just allowed myself to be in it for a moment. And this was the message that came through. I just kind of sat with it. I'm like, wow, that's a really good feeling. And I was like, is this a physical sensation? Is this hormones? Is it caffeine? Is it, which I'm not a coffee drinker, but I'd had a few sips of my husband's coffee because it smelled good. And, I was like, what is this happening? No, it was bigger than that. It was this overwhelming sense of energy. And the message that came to me from it, this is really what I love about teaching body wisdom and somatic intuition, and which is something that I do in my sessions with people, is helping them tap into their inner body wisdom to create the health and well-being and life experiences that they want from a healthy place. Was the message of my husband has had this, when we met, which was 20 years, we've been together for 20 years, so 20 something years ago, when we decided to join our lives together, my energy field expanded, and I didn't really realize it, but the life that he lived growing up versus the life I lived growing up when we met, when I decided to leave the small farm town that I went to high school in and go off to college in New York and go to the Merchant Marine Academy, which is this crazy idea anyway. And it takes a certain type of person to do that. And when we came, the first time I went to the island of Kauai, part of what I fell in love with was the energy of the island that was a part of him, because I knew it was a part of me that hadn't ever been expressed, and I didn't quite know what that was. And so our joining together in life completely expanded my energy. And I see this in my daughters, specifically my younger one, is the energy that she lives in is expansive and it's receiving. And the message I heard this morning was, what if rather than stepping into this expanded energy, you just allowed yourself to receive it? Because I realized in that moment that this expansive energy is already a part of me. This podcast has been an amazing platform for me to connect with people beyond my dream list that I ever even thought. So I consciously created a podcast dream list. And the guest speakers that I've already had on the show and that I'm going to be recording with way exceeded what I ever even thought was possible. And it just continues to expand and grow. And so does my energy, not just within my local community in Jacksonville, but now on a national level. And I've been to 35 countries. And so I'm just imagining energetically, internationally, the energy that I am and the connection of where I am in my life is just going to integrate on a global scale, because that's the energy that I'm in. And I just allowed myself to just really realize that this has actually always been a part of who I am. There was nothing to really, it wasn't the choice to step into. It was actually in the being and allowing myself to receive what was already waiting for me. And I thought about that with my conversation with my 10-year-old on the swim champs versus the surf competition. When we're really clear about, living in alignment with what matters most to us, we allow ourselves to receive more of what is waiting for us, what is available to us. When we choose to step into an energy, which is super empowering, and I see that. But when you think of energy, like a mass or a space of energy, if you're choosing to step into it, you're stepping into a space of it. But if you sit back and allow yourself to receive the wholeness of it, you're not missing the little things on the side. You're not missing those little connections, those little messages. You're just allowing yourself to receive what it is that you're supposed to receive. And another message that came through to me yesterday in personal work that I do is sometimes as long as I'm busy creating more, just kind of knowing like when is the time to become and when is the time to be. Because when I'm in the space of creating more, I might be missing something in the beingness, a connection, a client, somebody to be of service to. A moment with my daughter, or my husband, or my puppy, or the earth, something in nature. So what I want to leave you with today, in the exchange of energy between caretaking, mentoring, teaching, loving a child, a pet, somebody else's child, a niece and nephew, or maybe the energetic relationship is actually between you and your own parents, because that's possible. Allowing yourself to, giving permission to yourself to notice if you're consciously in this energetic exchange of energy. Are you in this exchange of energy from a place of love or a place of fear? A place of pride based on your own experiences. You know, for me and my daughter was like the ability for her to easily attain something that I didn't as a child. It didn't matter to her, and I certainly wasn't going to be the one to push that onto her. And some of you listening know that there are a lot of parents that do that, and there's no judgment in it, but it's just like, be curious about where your intention's coming from. Who is it serving? Is it serving the ego? Or is it serving unconditional love? Is there a self-limiting belief underneath of fear of not being good enough or being good only when you're a high performer, because that's mine, or not being lovable, that you're projecting onto relationships in your life that's unnecessary? So I just invite you to notice that, observe it, witness it. Awareness is the first step, right? And why this is so important to our healing self is because connection is a vital component in the healing and growth of our life experience. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you today. I hope that this maybe triggers or creates something profound. And if it does trigger something uncomfortable, it's just an invitation to lean in, right? And really just kind of be curious about what is this telling me about me? You know, without judgment or expectation. And of course, always, if you're looking for support, check out my website, jenmons.com, book a complimentary call, or find somebody, a connection, soul sister, partner, coach, somebody to support you, because that's part of our life experience too. Have a wonderful day. I look forward to connecting with you next week. Aloha. Hello, friends, and thank you so much for joining me today and being a part of this community. I know there are many other podcasts that you could be tuning into, and I am deeply honored that you chose to listen in and be present with me today. I love and cherish and appreciate you, and I want to invite you to join our tribe and Facebook group under jenmons.com/connect. I would also love to gift you your guide to discovering and overcoming the self-limiting beliefs standing in the way of you living in optimal health, more energy, fulfillment, and self-confidence to create an embodied, healthy, whole you. You can find this at jenmons.com/tribe. I also have one small request to help spread the love. In order for this podcast to show up in the feed of social media platforms of other like-minded people, we need reviews. So please head on over to jenmons.com/podcast to leave a review. You will also find other inspiring episodes on that page. So I personally read these reviews weekly and would love to give you a shout out and share your kind words with our listeners. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Jen Mons or The Holistic Coach with the W Holistic and Jen Mons, JenMons.com. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. Aloha.